Okie dokie, and there we go. And we're starting. So I'd firstly like to start off by acknowledging the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land in which I'm dialing in from today. But I also want to extend acknowledgement to the Bunurong people, who are the traditional owners alongside the Wurundjeri people across the lands which the municipality of Brimbank is situated. I pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and to any Indigenous people who might be joining us tonight. And I also want to acknowledge that sovereignty of this land wasn't ever ceded, and that it always was and always will be the traditional lands and the waters of, it always will be the lands of the traditional owners. And yes, I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge that. So I'm Zaylee, and I'm the Conservation Community Liaison Officer at Brimbank City Council, and very excited to have Ursula Dutkiewicz here this evening to help us celebrate National Bird Week with a presentation on the bird life found along our very own Kororoit Creek. So I'm just letting people in as I talk to you here. I also wanted to mention the Aussie Backyard Bird Count, which is occurring this week. It's run by BirdLife Australia. This is a week once a year that people across Australia are asked to help collect data on bird life in their local area. You only need to spend 20 minutes outside noting down every bird that you see in that time frame, and you don't have to be an expert. Life Australia actually have a really helpful phone app that helps you to identify as you go. Of course, you can Google things or refer to a textbook as well. Just do your best. And it's a pretty good family activity. So I definitely suggest if you've got kids doing it with them, they can get involved and learn a little bit as they go. You can do it in your backyard, you can do it in a local park, and you can do it as many times as you like as well. You don't have to do it just the one time, just as long as you do it in a 20-minute time slot. That just helps to keep that data very consistent. And BirdLife Australia also have some really cool prizes to give away. So there's an extra incentive there. Brimbank Council aren't actually affiliated with BirdLife Australia, but we do understand how important the collection of this sort of data is. So I really like to spruik it at this time of year just to get a little bit more information about the birds that we find here in Brimbank. Okay, officially like to introduce you to our wonderful speaker. Ursula Dutkiewicz is an avid bird watcher and loves to explore her local environment while capturing images used for inspiration in her art practice. She moved to the area just before lockdown and joined the Friends of Kororoit Creek to become involved in the local community to help restore the surroundings. This provided her the opportunity to explore the local landscape and the flora and fauna in more detail. It took some time, but as she weeded and planted along the creek, she slowly started to meet the neighbours who visited and called the creek home and discovered a myriad of wonders and connection. Ursula's been a practicing artist for over 30 years, mainly using clay as a medium, although she now incorporates her photography and mixed media into works that reflect environmental concerns, which is really cool. Over the course of her career, she has created many sculptures, murals, tiles.
Those little Billy Wagtail, that's not my name. But...
pop you on mute there. Sorry, over the course, I'm just going to start that bit again because I lost my train of thought there. Over the course of her career, she's created many sculptures, murals, tiles, commissions, community art projects, and had residencies. And she's also she also runs creative clay classes and workshops. Very active there, Ursula. Ursula has been a passionate tree sitter for many years, which is a UK charity with a mission to reforest the tropics, and they have funded over 20 million trees to date. That's really cool. She has an upcoming exhibition at the Hunt Club in 2022, which unfortunately it was postponed during lockdown. So definitely keep an eye out for that one. It's called Home, A Year in the Life of the Creek. So Ursula, I would like to pass it over to you now, and just remind everyone that if you do have any questions that come up during the presentation, to just pop them at the bottom, and yeah, we'll come to those at the end. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Zali, and welcome everyone. It's so lovely to be here with you all and to be sharing the creatures that call our creek home. And I only moved here a couple of years ago, and I'm very excited by what I've been discovering. So today, and as I always do when I walk the creek, I pay my respects to the First Nations people, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And no matter what land I'm on, I always acknowledge the country I'm walking and ask it to share its secrets with me in some way. And from that, it's a beautiful way just to connect with nature and the creek. And as I walk, I sometimes imagine I'm walking in the footsteps of the people who would have gone before me and what they would have seen and what they would have discovered. And part of the beauty of getting to know this area has been becoming a friend of Kororoit Creek and exploring it in that way, because if it hadn't been for lockdown, I would have never really gone into the depth that I have. So I'm going to go through a whole lot of slides of different things. They're all the birds that I've photographed over the last year. So it's been very exciting. And I gave a talk last year, and that was from the photographs from the year before. So there were a lot more birds I actually met, but and I do meet, and there are a lot of non-Indigenous birds, and I don't incorporate them into this talk. So also Zali, that was Tree Sisters, the organisation I'm involved with. So it's a UK charity that's planted all those trees in the tropics. So it's pretty fantastic. We're going to start tonight with this, the kingfisher, which is the most special bird really that I've photographed, and it's a migratory bird, and we just had World Migratory Bird Day. And this is one that will fly down from the north and come down this way, and it's looking for tree hollows, and or it'll dig into the riverbank where it will nest. So I haven't seen it this year. I might have left my run a bit late, but I've been going down every day looking to see if I could find one, because it's such a special little bird, the sacred kingfisher. And there it is there with a willy wagtail. So I just wanted to put those two together so you can see it's a bit bigger than a willy wagtail, but if you're looking for them on the creek, they're not very big at all. What drew me to this one, I photographed it at Selwyn Park, Buckingham Reserve, and a little bit downstream from that. And it was that white, that vivid white was what called me to it, because the blue fades in amongst the greenery. So I was so excited to find this on the creek, and it really made me more excited to explore what was around. So the willy wagtail is one of the first birds I saw on the creek, and it nests. I was counting them last year. It was about every 200 metres was a nest of this one. So the one on my left with the damselfly in its mouth, it was the young one, and on the one on the other side is the parent. And they're quite fluffy when they're young, so they look bigger. So I was very lucky to find this down at Buckingham Reserve. There's a nest there that sort of is very obvious where you feed ducks. So it's, well, I don't feed ducks. And if you do feed ducks, make sure you give them the right kind of food. So that would be, you know, things like peas and oats, and because birds don't actually eat bread, and it's not good for them. So the birds can get sick from eating bread. So it's better if you can find something, even duck pellets or something like that. So when I'm watching birds, it's good to be mindful all the time. One, I have to be mindful of snakes and other things around. Today I found Cunningham lizards down on the creek, and also a blue tongue. So there'll be snakes out there as well. So I have to take that into account when I'm watching the birds. And BirdLife Australia do have ethical birding guidelines if you're watching. So if you see a nest, it's just best to stay clear. I do photograph nests, and I have a very long lens, so I can get in close and have a look, but you can spook the birds really easily, so you have to be careful when you're around nests. But the willy wagtails are all along the creek, so you can't really miss them, and they nest in really funny little spots, but they make their nest out of spider webs and grass, and it's the most beautiful construction, beautiful little nest. Often where you find willy wagtails, or they will nest near this, is the magpie lark, and that is because more birds nesting together makes it a bit safer from the bigger birds that are prey on the littler birds. But this was in the same area in Buckingham Reserve, and they've just come off the nest. So this is a photo from last week, really. And you can see them there waiting for the food. And I did capture the parent feeding bread to the young ones. So that's why I'm mentioning it. Broke my heart a bit to see that, because you do see some birds can get very sick from too much bread. So those wonderful magpie larks, that'll make a warning sound. And I think it's about 4 beeps, beep, 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 when they're stressed by something, and it'll yell out and give a warning. So today they were all going off down at the creek at Buckingham Reserve because there was a butcher bird present, and you could hear all the birds and you could see them fly too. So that's how I'm listening to the birds all the time when I'm on the creek. I'm listening to the sounds and also to the weather. So on a windy day, I'll look in different spots because the birds probably shelter and are not so much out in the open. And here is the New Holland honeyeater. This one's everywhere. It's very prolific along the creek. And it's a honeyeater. It's a small bird. They were nesting down at the Lizard Lounge. So all these places I'm mentioning are the names of places where the Friends of Kororoit Creek plant. Not so much Buckingham Reserve, but the other ones I'll mention. So they were nesting. I got to see the nest there, and this beautiful little bird with that bright yellow, and they're very chatty, and they'll hang around in family groups. So I see lots of them all along the creek. And this little character, the white-plumed honeyeater, so almost the same size. These are really gutsy little birds, and they're nesting all along the creek as well. I see family groups of them everywhere. And this is the red wattlebird. So that little white-plumed honeyeater, they are often seen chasing the red wattlebird, and the red wattlebird seen chasing. They chase each other around all over the place. So they're vying for territories, and they love to eat the gum tree blossoms around, or other blossoms that are around. So and they make this wonderful cackle noise. So you always know when a wattlebird's around. There is another wattlebird called the little wattlebird, and it won't have those little red bits, which is called a wattle, just under its eye there. And yes, I'm often hearing the young ones along the creek at the moment. Now, at Buckingham Reserve, I just noticed we have the superb fairy wren there. Hasn't been there for the whole time, but I'm noticing it now. And this one is from the Lizard Lounge. And this is the male superb fairy wren. Beautiful little bird. It has the tiniest little chill of a call, so you can listen out for it, but they'll be in family groups, and they've just nested down in a clematis, I think it's called, a native clematis, at the Lizard Lounge, and in a spot where I couldn't help but be able to see it. So it was very exciting to watch the little ones. That's got an insect, a green caterpillar, in its mouth. They chirp around all over the place, either side of the creek. They're wonderful little characters. And there's the female. She's got a fly in her mouth, and that's the native clematis there. It's a vine, growing vine. So, and it has this dried off area, and they are nesting in that area. So we're very lucky, and they're beautiful little birds. White-browed scrub wren. This one was downstream, just downstream of Buckingham Reserve. very chatty little birds. You can hear them chatting away, and we've got them in most of the spots along the creek. All these birds like different kinds of environments. So the work that the Friends of Kororoit Creek is doing is creating those environments. So they like a lot of cover, and they do like trees, but more the bushy cover underneath, and where they're able to hide away any bush that's kind of a bit prickly or dense. You'll find all these kind of little birds hiding around in there. There's a family just downstream at Buckingham Reserve this morning of these. This is the smallest of the birds that I've got here. It's a silver eye. Looks pretty big there in a wattle flowers. But you know how this is only the tiniest of little wattle flowers. So it's not a very clear image. They're not that easy to photograph. But down at the lizard lounge again, they have been flitting around. Hard to see that one, but yeah, we're very lucky to have them. They'll be in a flock, so you can see these little flocks of them going around. But again, collecting insects. This one. This is a red-browed finch. Now, I've pilfered this from the lower Kororoit Creek because I've only spotted it a few times at the Buckingham Reserve, and I wasn't able to get a good image. So to save face, I've taken this from the lower Kororoit Creek. This is a tiny little finch bird, and one flew past me recently, and it's got red under the wings. So I couldn't quite tell. I mean, I'm not a professional to do with photographs. I mean, I take them for my own joy. And over the years, my studio is at the Gasworks Arts Park, which is in a park, and I had like a tree outside my window in which the white-plumed honeyeaters made a nest, and I was able to watch the whole thing. So I just get a little bit obsessed by bird watching. And now I'm realizing that it's a very important thing to do what I'm doing, because you're documenting what lives in the area. So for the, I've photographed about 50 different native birds along the creek so far. And so that's good to have that record. I do a bird count with the Friends of Westgate Park. I don't always go on it. I go on it occasionally, but they then come to my park at the Gasworks Arts Park and do a bird count. So I'm always able to supply photos of what I've seen and what's in the area. So it sort of backs it up as evidence. So that's a really good thing. This was down at the lizard lounge again. So the work that everyone's done there has brought the little birds. So this little one will nest maybe in some rocks. Sometimes they dig a hole. This is the spotted pardalot. Beautiful little bird, a little bit unclear, but I was lucky. The day I was photographing this, my camera broke, which I've now had it fixed, but right in the middle of getting photos. So it was not a very nice moment in time, especially when it's a new bird that I haven't photographed before. So, and someone who lives along the creek there, she found a nest and went, "What's that?" So we don't think it was this one. I think it was, there's been a European finch living down there. So it could have been the finch nest, but it was very exciting to find this one down there. This is, and I found this one at Buckingham Reserve, and how I found it was its call. It makes a very distinct call. And I didn't know at first, and I had to open up. I thought it was a cuckoo, so it's a fan-tailed cuckoo, and that yellow ring around the eye is a good way to identify that. Also, the tail will fan out. You see those feathers are very obvious when it does, but it was the call that I heard, and I actually fell in the creek in the hunt to capture a photograph of it crossing the rocks. So, but I managed to get this shot, and I was very happy and very wet. But yeah, those are the things you've got to be a bit careful when you're out, because you get a bit obsessed by looking at what you see. So yeah, it's very important to remain focused. So how do I identify a bird like that? So there's different parts of the bird you might look at: the feet, the beak shape, the feather type, and the environment, depending where it is. You know, is it a water bird? Is it a flying bird? What's it eating? So, you know, like with the honey eaters, that you'll find them in the blossoms, sticking their beaks in there. They might have a longer beak for that reason. The cuckoo, this one, will lay its eggs in other birds' nests and get them to raise it. So that's not such a nice thing, but for it, that's how it lives. And then its baby will kick the others out of the nest. And it can be very demanding, because it will put it into it could put it in the white plumed honey eater's nest, but this one's a lot bigger. So the chick grows and is suddenly enormous, and the parents are run ragged trying to feed it. This is the black-faced cuckoo shrike. Again, I hear the call of this one, or I see the grey wings, the grey flash. That's how I'm drawn to it, and I photographed this. This is living at the Selwyn Park, the Lizard Lounge, and Buckingham Reserve. I've even got one near my house, so that would be the stepping stones as well. So it's living all along the creek. There it's collecting nesting material, so that's a good sign. This one eats a lot of insects. It might even eat little lizards and baby birds, things like that. So we're getting, the welcome swallow. So this catches birds on the insects on the wing. You'll see it fluttering around down at Fraser Street, past the Lizard Lounge there. They're always flitting around. And this morning I found under the bridge there's a big nest with 3 chicks in it at the moment, and I was able to watch through my camera as the parents brought food and the little chicks all opened their mouth. This was taken further along on the rocks at Selwyn Park, but they don't land very often. They mainly catch things on the wing, and you have to be lucky to find them. They might land on a reed in the creek. They might, here they are on a stone or a branch that's hanging out over the creek. So, they do like nesting under the eaves. They create a little mud nest and a lot of bird poop. So they're a bit of a messy one, but beautiful to watch them fly. I can stand and watch them for ages, catching insects on the wing. And they've got pretty wings there. You can see, very small bird, but it's called a welcome swallow. There are a variety of different swallows, and so I'll look up a book, or I Google. I'll look at some part of the bird and go, what is it? What is it? Is there a dot on it? Or, you know, with the white plumed honey eater has a little line of white here. There's different things that the honey eaters all have different little markings that you'll be able to tell, and that's all I do sometimes. Sometimes I have to hunt far and wide to find out what it is, what kind of bird, but I always look up images, and I've got a bird book, so I'll look in that. There's field guides around that you can look, and also on Facebook you'll find a number of groups there, the Field Naturalist group. You can always put up a post if you get a picture, and they'll happily describe it, because a lot of birds are hard to identify. I have awful trouble, but when I see a new bird, I have to hunt to find out what it is, and I get really excited by that. That's part of the joy of it. We're moving into the water birds along our creek. These are the teal ducks, and that's a male and a female, I'm assuming, and I can't really tell the difference, but most ducks, the male and the female, are a little bit different. Under their wings somewhere there may be a little bit of fluorescent colour or something. These were taken at Buckingham Reserve only a couple of weeks ago, and a fairly small duck, not a big duck, but a really lovely one. This is the Pacific black duck, and you can see there the purple on the wing, so that helps distinguish it. Also the lines on the face, that helps distinguish things. And I noticed the other day on a post somewhere on Facebook, they were saying that there's enough Indigenous people to reawaken the black duck songline along the east coast. So that's really good news. And that stone that it was sitting on, you'll find it sitting on stones along the creek. The Lizard Lounge is a great place for ducks. There's a lot. And these were photographed there. This is the Pacific black duck. So this will be the female. I'm assuming because they're very little, the ducklings. This was on a day, the ducks could have up to, a large number of eggs, and they lay a lot of eggs and bring up a lot of young because the birds get taken. So if there's hawks along the river or different, even ravens will take a duckling when they're really, really tiny. And if you are fortunate enough to see them when they're that small, they are these zippy little things. They just zip up the creek so fast. They're wonderful to see. Always brings great joy to see little ducklings. This is the wood duck, all along the creek. We don't have masses of ducks, but these are often at the Lizard Lounge. They've been down at the Buckingham Reserve. And yes, that's mainly where I photographed them. The dark-headed one is the male, and the other one is the female, the lighter head. They have some green, fluorescent green under the wings. And it's lovely. That's one of my favourite ducks. But I've been meeting a whole lot of ducks lately. I've been going to a wetland, so I've met the pink-eared duck and the shoveler duck and the blue-billed duck and the I've forgotten the other one, but yeah, there's so many ducks and they're all amazing. And this, you've got to think of these things. This would be the food of the Indigenous people. They would have been so prevalent along the creek. And yeah, lovely duck. This one is the chestnut teal. The male has that bright green head, fluorescent head, and the female looks almost like the grey teal ducks, the first ducks I showed you. But this is a pair. They sometimes hang out down at the Lizard Lounge. And if you don't feed them bread, what they'll normally eat, they'll be eating, you can see them eating the vegetation, and they'll also eat insects and things like that. So that's what they're meant to eat. This is the dusky moorhen. So this is one of the most prevalent of the water birds we've got along the creek. You can just see there those giant feet. They're made for wading on the reeds. And yes, these are all along the creek. So we don't have masses of families, but you've got to think everybody has a bit of a territory. So they've got to have a space. And if you look at the creek at the moment, I mean, it's virtually flooding everywhere. It wouldn't normally have been like that, but we get all the storm water in there. So, and for all the birds that were nesting, they've probably been washed away now, which is not very good. But here, this was at Buckingham Reserve, just downstream. And this is not clear, but this was its babies. So they're pretty unusual looking little bird when they're little. And I'm sorry it's a bit blurry, but that's all I could get. And the other sad thing, I captured this picture of them was on a polystyrene box. So that's our pet hate, as Jody would tell you, along the creek. You can see it, the polystyrene balls just keep breaking down and breaking down and breaking down, and then they're little balls, and that becomes bird food, which is dreadful. And then it ends up in the ocean where it becomes plastic soup virtually. So the more plastic we can take out, the better. And this is them when they were a bit older. So you can see them there. And yes, they're in there. We're getting onto the cormorants. This is the little pied cormorant. So you'll find these like that on any branch hanging out over the creek like that. These are the cormorants. They're a fishing bird. They love to dive down and they'll fish. So if you watch them and keep your eye on them, when they come up, you might see a fish in their mouth, which is really exciting. I love to watch birds in the water fishing and see what they come up with. At Westgate Park, I did catch one, filmed it with a yabby in its mouth when it came up. So it's always very exciting. And when they get wet, they have to dry off before they can take off again. So you'll see them fanning their wings like that, like this, to dry off. So what it does mean for us is we get a good amount of time with them if you can catch them drying off, because you get to spend time with them and look at them. This one is the black cormorant, and that was down at the Lizard Lounge. I was so lucky to see a pair of them fishing together and sunning on the rocks like that, just drying off after they fished. And this one, look at that eye. How amazing is that? That's got this most beautiful greeny blue eye, green eye. And when they're sunning like that, it's often in a spot that's really close, so you can sort of get a good view of them. And they've got that little hook on the end of their beaks. Oh, sorry, I did a big zap. That's the great cormorant. This is the much bigger bird. The other two are smaller compared to this, and quite huge. And again, that blue eye, but that yellow bit is how you recognize this. It's got the same feathers as the black cormorant. You can see that pattern, which is pretty amazing when they're splayed out and you can see them. But that yellow bit on its beak there is how you know. And this, although we've got some, is an Australian darter. Now, this one was just taken down at the Selwyn Park. The darter looks like a cormorant, but it has a big, long neck. And when it's swimming, its neck just hangs out of the water, and it's also known like a snake bird, because that long neck, when it's swimming, everything else is submerged but the neck. So it's pretty amazing to see it fly along. And this one was then circling. I hope it's nested somewhere along the creek. I hope it found a mate. But a few people said they saw it down at Selwyn Park there. There's this lovely big stone that hangs out of the water, and I often see, not often, but a cormorant loves that sort of spot to stop and dry off after it's been fishing in the water. These are the white-faced herons. Now, this one lives up and down the creek. I don't know how much territory a bird will have, but at the moment they're nesting on the creek. There's a pair of them, and that's really exciting to see that. And this one is at the Lizard Lounge. You can see them at the bug rug, and they like to come to the stepping stones, and they hang out in trees when they're not in the water fishing. that long beak and that long neck helps in their fishing. And herons, egrets, when you're watching them, they'll just stand incredibly still and focused, and then they get there, and it's just this jab into the water, and they've got whatever it is. I've also photographed them with praying mantis, eating praying mantis. So they're eating insects, they're eating fish, probably shellfish, whatever they can find. And you'll find them in the long grass along the bank. Yeah, so I don't know how many pairs we'd have in that area, but we're very, very lucky to have them, and they're lovely to watch. This one is an egret. It could be a little egret or a great eastern egret. I am not sure myself. So because of that, I could put this picture in one of those sites and get someone to identify it for me. I've been looking and looking and looking, trying to decide which one it is. But apparently, if I had photographed its bottom of its foot, if it was yellow, it would be the little egret, I think. I think that's what it said. So it's a hard one to tell, and it's got the screen share over the top, so you can't really see its face. This actually, I took at Canley, is that how you say it, wetland. But I do know from Jessica, from the president of the Friends of Kororoit Creek, that this has been on the creek. Now, in the background there is a little bit of rubbish, which is very sad, but also this water plant that you can see with the little seeds, that is what a lot of the birds will be eating. I actually photographed a swan eating that stuff the other day, but I have seen the birds eating those off that water reed there. So all this environmental stuff is very important, that you create the right habitat for the birds to come. This is the rainbow lorikeet, and this is a young one, and how I can tell that is from the colour of its beak. Hasn't quite got to the red colour of an adult one. It's eating a wattle seeds. This was taken at Buckingham Reserve. I was very lucky to see this little one. And here's a pair of them at Selwyn Park. There's big trees at Selwyn Park. So this is what birds, these kind of birds are looking for. It's a hollow, and they're going to nest in there, or they're checking it out. Like we check out real estate, they're checking out the real estate to see, is this nest appropriate for me? When they build bird boxes, because there's not enough hollows anymore, because we haven't got enough trees, because a tree takes a long time to create a hollow. So the bird boxes, they make all different size entrances, because that will depend what kind of bird is going to go in there. So these were checking out this. I didn't go back to see if they did nest in there or not, but that's a lovely rowdy rainbow lorikeets. And there's another tree down there at the moment where there was quite a few the other day. So maybe they'll be nesting. But that's the kind of tree and what you want. Now, of course, we're replanting grassland. So there were river red gums and the grassland, but we've only less than 1% of the natural grasslands left in Victoria, which is incredibly sad. So the work the Friends of Kororoit Creek doing, and the council in revegetating areas, is so important if we want to have this kind of bird life, animal life along the creek. That's a galah. So we all know about the galahs, one of the most, what do you call it? So many of them along the creek. Now they eat grass, not the grass, but the bulbs in the bottom of the grass. So you'll find them digging up the lawns and eating seeds as well, grass seeds, things like that. So that this lot have been hanging around down at Buckingham Reserve of late. You can see them. There's been a flock down there. Sulphur-crested cockatoo. This one is at Selwyn Park. The other day there was a mob of 6 just ripping up the lawn, eating the seeds. It's an area in which they nest. Again, they're looking for the hollows, and last year they nested in the trees around that area, and the other day there were a few of them sort of hopping around doing things. So I imagine they're coming back to the area. So yeah, it's a shame we don't have more of the very old river red gums along the creek. These are the black cockatoos. A mob of about 20 flew over me at Buckingham Reserve today while I was down on the creek, as well as seeing, I was photographing a tawny frogmouth, and what else was down there? A blue-tongued lizard crossed my path. Earlier in the day, I was down at Selwyn Park, and there were just so many birds. It was fantastic. So really excited. Here is what this loves to do, these black wattles. It'll rip into that bark. One reason is to sharpen its beak, and it has to do it just to keep its beak sharp. So we look at our trees and go, oh my gosh, they've wrecked the place. They're pulling all the bark off. And I've seen branches fall because they do chew through them a bit. But last year I did photograph one of these, and it had got a witchetty grub out of the bark. But here it is, and they're ripping into that at downstream of Buckingham Reserve. So we're really lucky to have them around, and that is the yellowtail one. So it has yellow tail feathers, and that yellow dot there is how you tell. We have quite a few cockatoos, and they're all becoming a bit rare because of this problem with not enough nesting, the big old trees for them to nest in. Here is our good old friend, the magpie, and this is the young one, juvenile one, and everybody knows the magpie, but I just put that one in because it was a young one. And the swooping season is a little clearing now because the young are already out. They're only going to swoop you when it's nesting season. This is that butcherbird. Now, the butcherbird is actually related more to the magpie, but see that little hook on the end of its beak there? And it has the most beautiful song. When you hear the butcherbird singing, I can listen to its song forever. It's really beautiful. But that hook there, it's going to capture prey, lizards and things, and it will stab it to the tree, come back for it later. So it'll hook up its prey somewhere. So it's going to be eating little birds and lizards and insects and things. So when that song is heard, you see all the other birds get quite upset. And if it flies into a tree where they're nesting, you'll see the willy wagtails going off, and then they call out, danger, the butcherbird's here, and then everybody comes. Suddenly you see all these flocks of little birds, and it's usually, the wattlebirds, the white-plumed honeyeaters, the New Holland honeyeaters. They all come flocking over and have a go at it to get it to move on, to help protect. So it's wonderful how the birds work together. On one hand, you've got the wattlebirds and the white-plumed honey competing for their nectar, but on the other hand, they use each other. For the neighbourhood comes together to help protect. Also from the raven, the little raven we have here in Victoria, and a little bit blurry, that blue eye, but ravens are all over the place at the moment. There's a big mob down at Buckingham Reserve, and you can see everyone get a bit upset because the raven flies over and it's looking for insects. You'll find it'll go a piece of bark on a tree and kind of pull it off, and then it's looking for the spiders, and it's looking in the tree like here for case moth, you know, the butterflies in their cocoons and things, and other little birds. Same as this one, the Kororoit. Now, the Kororoit has another very distinctive call, and you know when one's around, which it was at Buckingham Reserve today, because all the birds went off, because it's looking for, it's going to raid your nest and get the little birds. And everyone was going off today. So there's so much competition, you know, everyone's quite on edge when that one's around. But we have them nesting down there, and they're also at the lizard lounge. And it's a bigger bird, bigger than a magpie, that one, that very strong beak. Now, here's our wonderful collared sparrowhawks. Now, these are nesting along the creek in a number of places. This one was taken near the stepping stones. And if you're identifying birds, I have a lot of trouble with birds of prey. So it's hard to tell. But a telltale sign of this white collared sparrowhawk is that long toe in the middle there, its claw. That's a sign. The tail, how it has a V shape in it, that's another sign. And also the eyes. If this was the goshawk, is often it's very hard to tell the two. The goshawk doesn't have such a long toe. It doesn't have that wedge in the tail, and it has more grumpy eyes. It actually has an eyebrow that makes it look really grumpy and aggressive. So this is a lot softer bird, but these are wonderful. They're along the creek, and this morning, I don't know if they were the nesting ones, but there was one jumping around with a little bird in its claw, not quite knowing what to do with it, or I don't know what it was trying to do. Anyway, I've got footage of it, lots of good photos. So that was very exciting to witness that, be fairly close, and I could just watch it. I wasn't worrying them at all. I always make sure I'm trying not to distress them. They let you know if you're too close. Like the other day, I was near a tawny frogmouth, and it started to make like a drumming sound, a deep sound in its throat. I was there, oh, I got too close. I mean, I was just walking near it. Here's a collared sparrowhawk again. This is a dead tree, and it's really important. It's good that council's left a few of these dead trees around, because this is habitat. They love this kind of tree because it's open, so they'll come there and eat their meal. And there's grubs in it for the other birds. It's really important that we leave some dead trees around for the animals. And then under this dead tree, there is like a little beach along the creek, and that's where the collared sparrowhawk goes and drinks. And I've walked along there and I've seen it. And sometimes the other birds give it away because they camouflage themselves really well. They hide in the trees. So, there's a tawny frogmouth. What a character. I love these birds. Not an owl, more of the nightjar family. And they're nesting all over the place at the moment. You might be lucky enough to have one near you. There it is, happy. It's going to at dusk and dawn. It loves to feed. So don't put baits out for rats and mice, because that's what this eats. And we don't want to see dead birds of prey and dead tawny frogmouths around. So it's very high up in a tree, not a clear picture, but you get to see it. And I always see this, how I know, is like a grey mass in the tree. And I often have to zoom in with my camera to see it. So that brings us to, thank you to the Friends of Kororoit Creek for all the work you do, and it's bringing the creatures to, well, they probably live here, but bringing them back. So there's dragonflies, butterflies, a fiddler bug there, the tortoises in the creek, which are around, and of course the blue tongues. So Thank you very much. I don't know how long I've talked to. I can just prattle on when I've got pictures to look at. But yeah, I'm so grateful to the Friends of Kororoit Creek for all that work, and to the council for caring about the environment the way you do. And it is only because of that that these creatures have lived. When you look at what the creek used to look like, the Friends of Kororoit Creek have showed pictures where there was just nothing. You know, the sheep ate everything, and the trees were all chopped down, and there was nothing. So, and it would have been an absolute wonderland beforehand, this grassland full of wildflowers. And when you go down to any of the plantings of the Friends of the Creek, they are just little wonderlands. And I'm really happy that I've been able to document some of that. And if lockdown can be thanked for anything, for me, I'll thank it for the time it gave me to get to know the creatures of the creek, and also to be involved in such a community that cares so much and spends so much energy and time in creating that habitat that brings the creatures back. So I thank them profusely, and I thank the council for the work they do, and all of you for being interested and coming to listen about what's down on the creek. So thank you. Thank you, Zali.
Thank you. And I also just want to echo the gratitude to the Friends of Kororoit Creek. And I've popped a couple of links in the chat. If you didn't see it, just scroll up, and definitely I recommend checking out their Facebook group to have a look at some of the work that they've been doing over the years. And their website as well. So thanks, Ursula. That was fantastic. Your photos are just phenomenal. I just have to say that they're fantastic, and it's just so nice to see a visual representation of everything that's down on the creek there. There's been a lot of comments coming through saying the same thing. The photos are just absolutely fantastic. Great presentation. Very happy. At this point, if anyone's got any specific questions you'd like to ask, feel free to either unmute yourself. I'm just going to stop recording,